Hi, welcome to Chapter 3. This is about the world marketplace, and we're going to cover a lot of topics in this short video. First of all, I want to lead off what's called the dramatic change. And, from World War II up to soon after World War II to about 2016, we saw this increase as free trade going across borders. You've seen NAFTA, and that was updated a few years ago. But what we've seen is that more use of tariffs. And these tariffs are the idea behind tariffs is that it makes a product coming from another country more expensive to encourage domestic production of the same product. Now, it doesn't necessarily work, but sometimes it does. And so I'm not going to stand here and tell you this is the way it should be or how things are. That's not my role. My role is just to tell you what's going on currently. So as we look, we see there has been some steady growth. As we talked before in previous chapters, it depends upon how you subscribe and what you subscribe to, how growth should be. Some may say a 2% growth is great. Some may say that it needs to be more like 4 or 5 for growth. It depends upon the philosophy that you subscribe to. But all I can tell you right now is there has been some growth. Um, in regards to where we stand here in the US, you can see here we have, a small percent of the population, but per capita we have the highest GDP. And if you remember what GDP is from previous chapter, is that it's the amount of goods produced within a country's borders within a given time frame. Typically it's at a quarter. All right, so we got the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. And what this is about is that if we see countries that are developing and they want to grow an industry, let's say farming or textiles, or they want to work with steel, they can go to the IMF and get money to help them build help them build a factory or whatever for that industry they want to get into. And so the IMF serves a really good purpose with that. So reasons for international trade. One of the things here you can see on the left-hand side, the access to factors production. Um, there is, there's resources that some countries may have that others don't. And so the countries do have those resources, they're able to leverage that and make their supplies and make their products. Um, Reducing the risk. Um, what happens here is that you're able to kind of like spread where you get products from other countries to help with your customer base. So maybe you get products from India, China, maybe you get it from Brazil, wherever that case may be. So you're not always relying on one source. So international trade is very good for that. And if something happens to you domestically, then you have issues with that. So for example, um, with the avian flu that we've had, and we had such a shortage on eggs, and we depend domestically a lot on the American farmer, we were able to get eggs from Turkey to help supply our market. So that's a reduced risk. We're able to go from another place to get our product. Okay, so a couple things I need to talk to you about here. The first is the opportunity cost. The opportunity cost is what you could be doing, the next best thing you could be doing other than what you're doing now. Now, I know you're saying to yourself, there's nothing else I could be doing now, Rich, that's better than listening to this video. Bad joke. But the point being is that if you are if you are going to produce, let's say, tires, and another product you could produce would be, I don't know, shirts. So you look at the difference between producing the tires and shirts. So, if you produce 20 tires, maybe that's costing you the production of 10 shirts. So that's the opportunity cost, the number of shirts per number of tires you're producing. An absolute advantage is when a country can absolutely do something better than anyone else. And it's nice to have that absolute advantage. Now, a comparative advantage is a little different. The comparative advantage is what we can produce at a lower opportunity cost. And this is the one that things are measured on, is more on the comparative cost. So what are you giving up in order to produce this good? And what's the cheapest thing that's being given up to produce this good? And that's how we're looking at the advantages of trade. Again, it comes down to comparative advantage. So in the previous chapter, we talked about surplus. Again, surplus is where you are exporting more than you're importing, or you're bringing in more than you're making. Trade deficit. Unfortunately, in the U.S., we have a huge trade deficit right now. We are importing more products than we're exporting. Balance of payments. Again, we have surplus. We have more money coming in than going out for trade, but unfortunately, we have more money going out than we have coming in. So we have a balance of trade deficit here. Exchange rates. This is critical because the exchange rate can determine where's the best place to make a product or when to buy it. So you see this example here on the screen about how when the US dollar is stronger, say against the euro, it made sense for US firms to do the work in Europe, but it makes sense for Europeans to try to ship everything to the US because again, the dollar's stronger. They'll get more money this way. All right, so a couple things I want to talk about here. You see this this chart about exporting, licensing, franchising, direct investment, and we talked about this in the introduction, I believe. So when you're exporting, what's happening is that you don't have a lot of control over the product. I'm sorry. You produce a product. Once you put it on transportation, you lose control of that product. Licensing, you can pay someone to produce that product for you. Okay, and you can do that in that country. Franchising is very similar, and franchising, you're starting to have a little bit more control of this now. So you're able to sell your process to someone, and it's under your company's name, and they run the business using your marketing, using your business plan, using your strategies. Okay, similar to what we see here in the U.S. in terms of like McDonald's or other franchises that you're familiar with. Okay, now you can see as we look at the chart here, the higher risk of more control, that is direct investment. So what happens here is that we as a company can invest 100% in building in country X. However, as we maintain more control over this, because we're hiring the people, we're hiring a management team, we're taking care of transportation, we're subject to their political environment. So country X has an absolute right to take our assets. They can freeze our assets, they can take them over. So that's why you see such a bigger risk, and there's not a thing that we as a company can do about it. So that's one of the things that we have to consider. All right, so just again, in terms of the ideas of exporting and importing here, importing again is where, we bring the product in, to our shores. Foreign outsourcing, this was big in the 1970s. We used to be a huge manufacturing country. And what happened is that businesses decided it was easier, it was cheaper, and sometimes even faster to produce a good overseas and ship it back to the US. And it was much more cost effective. And so you've heard me talk about this before in previous discussions. We are more of a service society now, service economy, than we are a manufacturing economy, because basically we import a lot of our manufacturing goods. Exporting, I think you have a pretty good idea about. We talked more about the foreign licensing and foreign franchising in a previous slide. And again, the level of commitment that you see with this, if we're licensing, we do have some form of control, not much. We gain much more as we franchise. Now, the direct foreign investment, we talked about how there's more risk and more control. Joint ventures, that's where you find this partner and you're looking at your resources here. So maybe you're sharing proprietary software. You're sharing trade secrets with each other. And so you need to be careful with this, because while you're not truly forming a partnership, you are working together, and it's quite possible with the joint ventures and the partnership that they can steal some of your customers, they can steal some of your trade secrets, and whatever makes you distinct in the market, they can take that. So we need to be careful about joint ventures and partnership. So with partnerships, you can see it's the agreement between two more people or organizations. And so you could have one company have 60% of the market, 60% of the company, one have 40, it could be 50-50, 70-30. It varies. But this partnership is where there's some sort of investment by two or more groups into the organization. So some ideas about trade barriers, um, social cultural differences. Um, you see here in the screen language, so you may get an idea here where, we speak English here in the US, but you may deal with another country whose language you don't speak or they don't speak English. Um, their values may be different in how they conduct business. There's lots of things that we would consider unethical, like maybe taking bribes, for example. That's other countries, it's accepted. So we have to take a look at what the values are between where you're at and the countries where you're dealing with. There's businesses within the countries that you're dealing with. Okay, so some ideas about barriers and infrastructure. Transportation, they may not have the roads, they may not have the airports, they may not have the ports. Okay, so there might be some issues there. For communication, maybe they don't have the same type of networks that we have here. Energy, what's their power structure like? Do they have power lines? Is it safe? Is it stable? And in finance, they may not have access to as much money. So there's different reasons why there are infrastructure issues that we have to consider. And this is where, if we have something that we know that's really good and that we have something that we know is going to be successful, we'll make more direct investments in these countries. Okay. Political legal differences. As I mentioned in a previous slide, a country can seize your assets within their borders. Okay. And so even though we may have laws here that prohibit that, you're in another country, so there's not much we can do. In the terms of the political environment, stability is everything. If you're in a country that there's some political turmoil, whether it be a coup or elections might go wrong, or there's lots of protesting, whatever the case may be, that could be an issue for your country, I'm sorry, for your organization, because your people may be afraid to come work. They may be the ones protesting. They may not want to be involved in work. So there's some political climate's very, very important. Tariffs we've talked about. Again, it's money that's again added to the cost of product coming into the U.S. or into a country. Quota is simply how much is allowed within that country. Okay. So, for example, country X, if they decide to make, say, they'll go tires again, they can only import 1 million tires. That would be the quota. That's all they can do. Embargo is where we totally have a ban. We don't ship anything to anywhere. The most famous embargo was in the mid 1970s, where the oil companies refused to give oil to the U.S. That was an embargo, and that caused gas lines, and that caused a lot of havoc within the U.S. For some of you who are younger that are watching this, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. For those of you who are a little bit older, you probably have an idea. But for a good history lesson, go to YouTube and look it up. These gas lines were long. Okay. So a couple things I want to talk about here. Free trade, again, that's an unrestricted access between borders. We used to have it here with Mexico, Canada, and the U.S., where trades can go back and forth. So that was good. The WTO, what this is people can go, or countries can go, and uh, if there's any type of argument between countries about trade, payments, whatever the case may be, the WTO can serve as an arbitrator for this, and they want to see trade go across borders. They want, because the countries are involved in this, they're trying to grow their countries, and again, they can be an individual or an entity that says, okay, we'll try to solve this problem between two countries. The World Bank. The World Bank, as you can see here, is geared toward more kind of as a social aspect of it. They want to reduce poverty, um, and so they want to try to move people forward and try to help them improve their lives. And so they can give the loans, as you see here, the low interest loans. Um, but there's some strings attached to this. You have to make sure that you're abiding by a an agreement that says, hey, we're going to have this we're going to change our economic policies. We're going to do this, this, and this with the result of that. And then the World Bank say, okay, we're good. We'll give you the money. But it has to be shown there's going to be changes, and there has to be shown that this is for the good of the people of that country. The IMF we talked about earlier, in regards to giving money to countries to help them develop their products. So you can see here in the third point, promoting international trade, and in this fourth point about lending money to member nations to address economic problems. If there's issues, if they have to grow, if they need equipment, again, the IMF will help them out. Trading blocks. We had one here of NAFTA. That's where there's North American Free Trade Agreement. Again, Mexico, U.S., and Canada, we all ship their products across borders. That has been updated to the USMAC. And what this did, as you can see, it replaced NAFTA in 2020. And without going into details about the trade deficits or anything like that, all I just want you to know is this is the current structure of trade between the Canadians, the Mexicans, and the Americans. And the purpose of this is to move products throughout all three countries, in theory without tariffs, but to promote the products of each country. European Union. That was, the block of European countries. And what this does is the European Union, they can get together and they have much more power together than they have as the individual 27 countries. And so this gives them the world's largest common market. And so this market is huge for people to get into, like US, China, maybe even India with their products. And so the European Union is able to move products within their countries and without tariffs, without any type of restrictions. And so it's really positive, and it's done wonders for the European Union. Now I know they have some issues. Italy's had some issues, Portugal's had some issues, but as a whole, it's done pretty well. And of course, about the Brexit in 2020, where the United Kingdom pulled out. The last slide that we're going to talk about is the reasons to create trade restrictions. The top one here, you see promote domestic industry. Yes, we want to produce things. We want to produce things within the borders of our country. Protect the national interest. If it's electronic, maybe there's bugs in it. Maybe they do some tracing of our people. There's some rationale for national security issues. Now, why to eliminate the trade restrictions? Increase the job opportunities. If there's, but it may not be in terms of manufacturing, but maybe longshoremen, for example, transportation, logistics jobs within organizations, reduce the prices, because if someone's ever able to produce something better, cheaper, faster, then we're all better off. Okay, so that is my discussion on chapter 3, and I hope that you enjoyed it, hope that you listened to it, and if you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask. As you know, I'm here for you. Take care of yourselves and have a terrific day.